With all the press that Naughty Dog has been getting the past few months regarding its upcoming sequel to a well-beloved game, The Last of Us, had me thinking about the experience from me playing the game for the first time a couple of years ago. At first glance, looking back, I thought it was a great experience. I'm glad that I have played the game, but are the memories that I have about The Last of Us romanticized at all? My name is Jay Experience, and today we are looking back at what I think to be one of the most divisive games of our time, The Last of Us. If you haven't played the game yet and want to play soon without any spoilers, I suggest that you don't watch this video, as it will mention a few spoilers along the way.
Well, here, this make you all nostalgic?
You know, that is actually before my time. That is a winner, though.
It was a couple of years ago when I first got a copy of The Last of Us, the remastered version for the PS4. Obviously, the game has been out for a while, yet I had no idea what it was going to be about, so I didn't have any expectations. I remember feeling great about finishing the game and thinking that it was good. It was awesome. I really liked the plot, the characters, and the feeling that the game left me after seeing the credits roll. Thinking back now, I can remember all the things that I thought the game did well, but I also remember the things that the game did poorly. So I asked myself if what I am remembering is a romanticized version of the game, instead of the actual game itself and how my experience of it was. I've had plenty of conversations with friends and people online about the game. Some love the game as it is and think of it as a masterpiece, especially when it comes to its story. A lot of people rave about the narrative that The Last of Us was offering, but there were always some who hates the game and points out all its flaws, including the predictability of the plot and less than perfect game mechanics. Just for a little background, I am the type that loves to play games with a good narrative. I like a good story, whether it be about war, love, friendship, or even the zombie apocalypse. And the story of The Last of Us definitely caught my attention. One thing that I noticed right away was that it seemed familiar. And familiar isn't necessarily good, nor is it necessarily bad. It's just familiar. The predictability of the plot was definitely there, but it was the presentation of how things are unfolding that got me going. The twists and turns in the plot were good in my experience, alongside the character development of the two main characters, Joel and Ellie.
Whoa, I don't think that's
I'm
the
not
best
Ellie.
idea.
Him?
The game was filled with themes of desperation and high tension. Being a survival game, lacking resources while pushing through levels are always a challenge. The way it looked as a whole was amazing as well for the PlayStation 4 remaster. The overgrowth on the buildings that are about to collapse, the abandoned cars on the highway, and the gritty urban sections with empty shops and restaurants was an aesthetic that sets the mood well. As I watched Joel and Ellie start to get along and understand each other, I felt like I was understanding their world and their circumstances more and more. It was the journey that I took with these characters that I loved about this game, allowing me to dive deep into the narrative. The small parts of interaction and dialogue between Ellie and Joel while they are traveling in the infected-filled post-apocalyptic America was a great way to build a bond between the characters and the player. These acted as a small reminder that even with all of this happening around them, all the killing that they need to do to survive, at the end of the day, Ellie was just a 14-year-old girl who was born into the infected world, and Joel was once a loving father to a sweet little girl that died brutally in his arms.
I'm good.
You sure?
I've said I'm good.
The supporting cast of the game's narrative offered a nice addition to the story as well, as the player sees Joel and Ellie interacting with them showed how they've changed throughout the game. I mean, who can forget how badass Tess was in the early game?
That is a stupid idea.
How gruesome and dark the game felt when they ran into David and the cannibals?
You kill to survive. And so do we.
How Henry was a total butthole for leaving Joel to die?
I'm sorry. We're leaving.
What? What's this bullshit?
And the scene where Ellie had stolen Bill's special magazine.
I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Now, I will try to stop fanboying too much and look at what didn't work in this game. The game promotes a stealth approach, where every action must be planned out and every kill must go unnoticed. But when everything goes wrong, you can always pull out your gun. You don't want to be pulling out your gun. The game's shooting isn't the best. The shooting system can use some improvements, as it is sometimes better to ditch the gun and just use throwables or melee items. I find myself using Macho Man Joel a lot more than actually shooting, using melee and just straight up punching zombies and people until either they or Joel is dead. As fun as that was, breaking the game with Joel's fists and multiple tries in a level, it definitely took away from the game's experience. And while traversing through the environments, certain things start to take some of the immersion away. The environments can spoil an upcoming gunfight that is about to happen, especially when the obvious covers to be used in fights are just out in the open, ruining the surprise moments. Alongside the obvious cues for the otherwise interesting environment, exploration is sometimes punished. Additional dialogue from Ellie can sometimes appear as a prompt. But if you stray away too far and Ellie starts to follow you, the dialogue or interaction is gone. The AI can definitely behave in a weird manner as well, both the enemy AI and the companion AI. The classic tense moment so be quiet situation, ruined by companion yelling their lungs out, happened way too many times for my liking. And the enemy that you are trying to bait close to your trap won't cross an invisible barrier, even after it was chasing you for a while. The overall gameplay was indeed flawed. It was clunky at certain parts. I remember feeling disconnected from the game a few times over through my first playthrough. From being immersed in the narrative to being frustrated about its mechanics. It's not a fun time to juggle between the two. But I pressed on, and I remembered that it was the story that mainly made me keep playing. I heard the argument that the story was too generic, it was too predictable. But that really did not stop me from pushing on with the game. Maybe at the time I was not completely tired of the tropes that the game was presenting. And to me, the good parts of the game made up for the bad ones. The twists and turns I thought was good, as others thought they were forced and predictable. And to a degree, yeah. Some of the parts of the story you can kind of see from a mile away. The closed off Joel warming up to the young Ellie since he had a daughter that he lost was a given. I think that everyone could have seen that coming, and it's a bit cliche. But it was the journey to get there, and the details and the specifics, that did it for me. Yes, it was all familiar at certain points. And to reiterate my points, familiar isn't necessarily good, nor is it necessarily bad. I gave it the benefit of the doubt, and I can say that cliches are cliches for a reason. It had enough differences in my opinion, or at least to what I was exposed to at the time, that it held its own. Maybe it was the way the story drew me in from the beginning, and having no expectations about the game whatsoever, that made me greatly interested in seeing the story through. The gameplay flaws were balanced out by character development, environmental storytelling, and compelling themes for my personal taste. It got me to look past it. The moments where the post-apocalyptic world presented some normalcy, such as when Ellie had Sam, someone around her age, to talk and play with. Joel talking about how he wanted to be a singer when he was younger.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to want to be a singer.
Shut up.
It was those moments and the desperate tone of the game that really put character development and compelling narrative in front of the audience. And then it got to the ending. Oh boy, that ending. It was amazing. It is always the first thing that I remember every time I look back and reminisce about The Last of Us. The way Joel lied to Ellie about the fireflies, and the way Ellie seems to know that Joel was lying to her. With just a shot of her, staring and looking not to be convinced, but seemingly trying to convince herself and trusting Joel that he did the right thing. Her expression was open to interpretation, whether she believed Joel or not. The game leaves it to the player to fantasize about what happens next, and what is really going on in the character's mind. I thought it was a great way to end the great emotional roller coaster that is The Last of Us. Maybe I am just really easy to please, but sometimes I ask myself, why do I need to find complicated sources of pleasure in my video games, when simple things that I like about them are enough? So was this game a masterpiece? I wouldn't give it that much credit. It definitely is a flawed game, but I would say that it's not bad. I actually think that it's better than most, and I know a lot of people would highly disagree, and that's fine. I believe that people should have their own opinions about the games they play or the games that they stop playing. Everyone should have their own standards about what is good to them, because that's what games should be all about, especially narrative-driven single-player ones. It's about how you, the player, experience them. So what are your thoughts about The Last of Us? Are you looking forward to The Last of Us Part 2, despite all the controversies around it? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. If you like this video, consider leaving it a thumbs up, as it helps me out a lot. And subscribe if you want more videos like this one. I try my best to post videos every Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Again, my name is Jay Experience, and I'll see you next time.